It is 7:03. Time to call this.
I may have
Time to-
inadvertently burned it. My apologies.
7:03. Time to call this meeting to order. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Taylor, if you lead us in opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, please look over us this evening while we do the business for the city and for our residents, keeping everybody safe, keeping with our upcoming events, Halloween, etc., keeping everybody safe, our sporting events, etc. Please allow us to have the strength and the courage to make the decisions necessary for the city and stay humble in the process. In your name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Call the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Sherman?
Here.
Mr. Dumpy?
Here.
Ms. Grant? Mr. Booth?
Here.
Ms. Jones? Here.
I'll motion to excuse Ms. Grant for this evening.
I'll second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last regular meeting?
Wish to approve?
Second that.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
All right. The auditor/treasurer's report.
I don't have a copy of the treasurer's report,
You want
but
one?
I'd read one. You want me to read it?
No, I don't.
Well, not that one.
All the auditors, yeah, you don't have it. You just have
Oh,
it.
okay. I just took a
He
picture.
did the treasurer.
Yeah, he did the treasurer's report. Do you guys not have a copy?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Well,
Can everybody hear us out there so far, Scott?
that's what I'm trying to find out. There's only 5 here, it looks like.
That's okay. You can
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't read a copy of it.
No, you can go ahead and just read it.
I'll let you guys pass it down if he wants a copy. Okay, Mr. Mullane's treasurer report. Ending August 31st for August 2020. You'll see on the first page account balances between the sweep account and the CDs, 2.174 million. On the next page, record of investments, you'll see interest earned to date on the right side for each account, totaling $30,722.50. A lot of that came before the Fed reduced the rates to close to zero. Now our interest each month is close to nothing, almost zero. And probably will stay that way for a while. You'll see the sweep account, including checks cleared, 1.071 charges to the concentration sweep account. Deposits and transfers of $737,283.85. And let's see, where is his? Oh, at the very last page, down at the very bottom, you'll see difference between bank account and book balance, $9.60, which essentially means when he reconciled all the accounts, interest, CDs, and the books that essentially Judy and I prepare, he got within $9.60, so pretty close. So that's the treasurer's report. The auditor's report. So yes, I will do it up here actually. You'll see August auditor's report, City of Nelsonville, given today. Here is our statement of cash position on page 1. What did we collect and what did we spend? You'll see in August, or as of August, we spent $306,308.23 more than we brought in. I'd just like to note the steady general fund throughout the summer. It's been pretty steady, almost in that same range that you see it there at the top right corner. Recreation fund currently in the negative, which is another point of note. And this month we spent $31,661 more than we brought in the month of August. Next page is just our tracking of healthy balances. General fund's pretty steady. Street funds are combined slightly lower than at the beginning of the summer, about $30,000 lower, which should be expected by most summers when most street work gets done. Negative rec, $168,000 in the capital, pretty steep decline from the beginning of the year. $463 in the water, $282,000 in the sewer, and the comparisons on the right side here of what would be a very comfortable balance for us and the state to look at each year. Credit card report, most of this is from last report. It's just reminder information about why this report's included. I could not get the credit card statements to turn out the right direction for those of you at home. But in general, you'll see here the first is street department and a summary of charges down here, mostly in this bottom third of the page. Again, this is a requirement under House Bill, I believe it's 314. Council has to review the purchases. It's not an approval of the purchases, but instead a check on our policies and procedures. The next page is the police department. The next page, the fire department, I think. Yeah, I see Barbara. And the next one is administration. So the card that mostly myself or the city manager or Becky or any combination of the three use. On the next pages, you'll see expense and revenue reports. These are more detailed than in the past, so I just wanted to present as much information as possible. These are all our funds, from general to the CARES Act. My mouse stopped working. There it is. So this is revenue. So you can see each fund revenue brought in this month, totaling down at the bottom, the expenses, or I'm sorry, year to date, down here totaled at the bottom, and the percentage of what we thought we'd collect at this point on the far right side. For August, you'd expect to be between 65 and 70%. For most of our main funds, which would be general 100, the 200 series right here, and the 600, 7, and 755, water and sewer, we're close with the sewer fund lagging behind as it's been doing all year. Expense reports, the same thing, all the funds, month to date, year to date, left in budget, percentage of budget spent. Most of the funds between 65 and 70%, as they should be. General fund right in that range. 200 series, a little behind, so they're underspending, which is, considering the amount of work getting done, is a good story. Water fund, exactly smack dab in the middle between 65 and 70, right on track. And sewer lagging, which is good practice considering the revenues are lagging. Next page is by department. I couldn't get this for you at home to turn around, but you'll see police, fire, city manager, and code combined, law director, prosecutor, FEMA expense combined, auditors, audit, investigation, cost, water sewer bill combined, utilities, water sewer plant. You'll see the total budgeted for each department, the total spent so far this year, and the percentage of expected expenses. And you'll see most of our major departments right in that range of 65 to 70, with some bright spots like utilities, which looks to be the largest combined budget in the city. Currently doing well with the budget. Final items, I just wanted to encourage folks at home to apply for the HABCAP Water Assistance Program. There's the phone number. If you're behind on your water bill, HABCAP has so far offered up to, well, currently we're at $26,000, $27,000. If you qualify, and then the water abatement policy information will be going out to residents within the next 30 days. A low-cost option to protect against low or large water charges in the event of water loss and leak. And I just wanted to update council that the audits are continuing at a somewhat intense pace. They're here the next 4 days on site, and they're covering everything. I mean, routine, non-routine, investigative, you name it, and they're here. They were here 2 days of last week. And that's all I have. For anybody at home, if you'd like to see this report, it's at the website this evening.
Taylor, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you explain the Park and Rec Fund negative balance? What's the purpose or what's the reason?
So part of the reason is the rec fund runs negative often
Okay.
throughout the year and then kind of squeaks out a little victory above zero at the end of the year. That's part of it. This year it's a little more pronounced. 11,000 is much more pronounced than usual. Essentially because we just couldn't run the pool as long.
Okay.
Um,
I thought that's probably the reason, but I just wanted to ask.
yeah.
I have another question, if it's required that council review credit card statements, there's no way that we can review credit card statements because we're not involved in the decisions to make the purchases, and I was wondering if that's a requirement that we be notified, that Scott look at them and sign them that they're approved on the copies we receive, because just logically, there's no way that we can look at a credit card purchase and know whether it's legitimate or not, because we're not involved in the decision.
So I would just put two things forward. One is Scott approves all purchases before they happen.
So could you
And
go
then,
through these real quick and write approved and initial them and before you copy them?
I can do that.
Yeah,
The second thing I was gonna say was council's not actually approving the purchases, they're reviewing. And then council, the state's intent is that if council sees a policy or behavior they don't particularly agree with, it's their council's position that they should speak up. It's just another check on
Yeah,
the
but-
Or if they have a question about purchase.
or a question.
but by our policy, by our charter, we have no part in the day-to-day running of the city, so there's no way that we can know whether a purchase is, and the thing we should be checking is whether our city manager has approved that purchase, and if they're just marked approved and initialed off, then we can look and say, well, our city manager approved them, and we have to trust our city manager to make those decisions. We can't do them all ourselves, and the charter intends us not for us to do them all ourselves.
I think it's more for transparency than it is anything else.
Well, and another thing is just that we don't send the check for the credit card unless we have final purchase order sign off for every single purchase on each invoice. It can be kind of on busy months, it can be a pretty intense process chasing down receipts and approvals, but.
All I want to know is somebody's looking at the credit card bills and approving them. That's all I want.
So, yeah, so just have Scott, you sign off on them. Taylor, I appreciate making copies so that we can see everything, and we'll just go from there.
Taylor, do you know how much longer the HAPCAP health assistance will be for the water? Do you know how much longer they will continue on for residents that may be?
They have given us no deadline, so they added accounts to their list today. We have an Excel sheet that we all work in at the same time that we can see what they're updating real time. And there was an individual who, I'll just say, one of the largest water debts in the city, period. And they were confident all year not all year, but since HAPCAP started this a few months ago, that they would not qualify. Every time we told them, they were confident they would not qualify, and HAPCAP posted over $1,000 to their account today. So I really encourage folks, I don't think people realize how intense HAPCAP's efforts are to keep water on in the city right now. So I really encourage folks to call the number.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Thank you, Taylor, for your report. Mayor's court report.
So, right now, the reports are lagging behind on that because we need to purchase program, and with the new clerk and stuff, we got a new program coming that'll do all that.
Okay.
So we need to file with the state as well for bring to court. So this new program will help us with all of that information, as well as automatically tell us what we're paying the state. So that is forthcoming and should have that by next council meeting for you. But on a lighter note, we do have in collections from the last mayor's court over $3,000 in fines and traffic.
Okay. All right, now we are to citizens' comments. Do we have anything, Scott?
Nothing at this time.
Okay,
If something pops in, I'll let you know.
all right. Business and organizational comments. Okay. Committee discussions.
We had a utility committee meeting, and that we decided that we, on the dumpsters out here, we would bid it both ways and then let full council decide which bid they wanted to take. We also decided that all collections, if possible, will be from the street, not the alleys, because our foreman is saying the alleys are being tore up. So if we're going to require in the bids that, and actually the haulers like that idea. They don't like having to go down the alleys. But to save our alleys from damage, whatever, if it's possible, if at all possible, then if there's some place in the city where you just absolutely can't collect from the front of the street, well then Scott will have to okay that. But we've made a decision to do that. We are going to contact the city attorney and ask him to draw legislation that makes it illegal to import trash from one residence outside the city to another, or from one residence to another, because on our trash hauler, we go, we basically, if you have any amount of trash coming from a residence, you're allowed to set it out. But if you're bringing in your cousin's trash from out to New Marshfield and things like that, well then people in Nelsonville are actually paying for that trash service, because the trash hauler bids on the whole job. So we're going to ask for that. We are going to bid it both ways, whether the city bill or the hauler bill, and let full council decide what one of those two bids they want to take. And I think that pretty much covers it, didn't it?
That's it.
When does the contract expire? Did we extend it to December 31st or April?
It expires,
April.
April.
yeah, but we want to get the bids out as soon as possible.
I got a question for you, Greg. Do we want to make the decision about whether the city bills or the hauler bills before? Only because if the city bills, then we may have to look at changing some of our.
Well, we're hoping to get the bids out
Early
right
enough.
away.
Early enough that
So that we can look at
And
those.
then we'll get them back, and then everybody on council can look at them and express what they want to do and make their decision on it. There's a couple things that we have to talk to the law director about once those come back. Like, for instance, if somebody has a water, sewer, and a trash bill and it's $45 and you get a payment for $25,
Where's the money apply?
where's the money apply? And the thing, if we do our own trash billing, that becomes a proprietary account. You get one bill from the hauler, so you have to charge enough money so if somebody doesn't pay their bill, you can still pay the hauler. And so there's considerations in that, and we just felt full council needs to discuss that and look at it and decide what they wanted to do. But we're going to try to get the bids out as soon as possible, so there's plenty of time to make that decision and award those bids. So,
Scott, would you go and check on other municipalities that do this and see what their policies were?
Roger, I haven't made contact with any of them other than Athens. I talked to the Athens folks in there, but it's not a comparison of the way they bill and do their trash and everything else. So the guy that does their trash actually came up and wants to make sure that they get to put a bid in.
I did find out from the current hauler that does one, that they are adding $2 a month for every customer. I found that out the next day after we had the meeting. That was from our hauler, and he said that, the one company he has, or one city he has that's billing, is adding $2 a month to the bill to cover people that don't pay their, and so,
Is the garbage and recycling going out together?
everything.
So when you say garbage, you mean garbage and recycling?
Garbage and recycling, yeah.
Yep.
All one contract, and on that, we're gonna bid it where you either have, for the bid separately, to have curbside or to have the current collection. But I wanna emphasize, the current collection is not free. We're gonna if we go with the current collection we got, we're gonna require them to empty those 3 times a week to keep the mess down. And that's gonna add money to people's bills, so it might be cheaper just to get everybody a roll-off. And the other thing in that regard is if we decide to go with our own billing, Roger Bales said there's a pretty large grant available to cities that are establishing a new, and so there's a chance that we could get a grant to help pay for roll-offs. And we just have to work the legalities out on that, so.
Just for the recycling.
Just for the recycling, but it may be just as inexpensive to have your own recycling container that you can roll out to the curb once a week instead of having to drive over to dumpsters. We'll have to get the bids and see, then everybody can make that decision.
Thank you.
Carl's not here to bring up finance notes, so basically we ran through some questions on billing. We also did ask Taylor if he thought his group could do billing for trash. That's where we asked Scott and them to look into see what other municipalities do. There was an appropriation looking for $6,000 for vehicle maintenance and fire department, as well as finishing up some building maintenance stuff for the police department and adding some stuff in for the fire department, like a man door on the side that's just rotted out and they can't secure the building. There was also discussion of a $10,000 appropriation for water leaks, hiring a company. So that didn't make it into the appropriations, so I don't know where that fell through the cracks, but.
Actually, I forgot, we approved that in,
Well, but it still had to go through finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it got approved, it just.
Yeah, it was coming out of the water.
So
Straight north.
so Scott and I talked about it after finance, and there was already appropriations where there was leftover project money. Basically, it was just in water.
So we're good?
All right.
So he's-
Scheduled this today, should be
The,
November.
Clerk, move for the.
Oh, and then there was also a discussion of adding the clerk, which there's an ordinance tonight on that as well. Moving a part-time to a full-time position. And that was due to the collection of outstanding bills that have been sitting in the city for a long time.
All right.
That's just what I think.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sherman. All right, we're going to the code enforcement update. Ms. Barber, if you would.
Good evening, everyone.
You have 5 minutes.
Right. She's got PowerPoint.
She's got a PowerPoint.
July to September of 2020, there was 54 warning issued. We're on the second one. There you go. 54 warnings were issued and 18 citations were given, which gives us a 33% compliance rate. Rental registrations have been coming in, so the month of September has been a big focus on getting that information out to folks, getting their permits sent to them. So that's why the numbers are a little low. Vacant properties, we've got 88 residential vacant properties, 5 commercial. So we've got a total of 93. And we've been focusing on vacant properties, documenting, photographing, doing the research and background of all these vacant properties. So a lot of time's been spent on that as well. We have, according to the census of 2010, we had 2,257 housing units. Out of that 2,257 housing units, 5% of our housing units are vacant. So if you do the math, we've got about 5% vacancy in the city. 1,040 are rental units or registered rental units. So the numbers have went down. I've read numbers of being 51, 52% rental. It's went down with our numbers of how many people are actually registering versus the 2010 census information. So we're looking at about a 46% of housing units are rental. Okay, this next slide are priority properties. These are properties that I've been really focusing heavily on. As you can tell, we have the first photo is a vacant building on a piece of property on Chestnut Street. So a lot of folks, if you're not running the alleyways, it's hard for you to know what's in the city as far as garbage and dilapidated buildings. The second photo was a rental complaint that actually came in, and the individual for years had ran the sewer and the water line. It was disconnected, unhooked. I got the complaint, went over, told him what code he was violating, let him know that I would condemn the property right away. It took him 2 hours to fix this, to remedy this problem, and it was like that for several years. So when the lady or the
Somebody
folks,
living in it?
it was a triplex, absolutely, it was a rental. The information I gathered on the rental, the guy was making $1,900 a month on all 3 units combined. This rental is very close to Canal Street, very close to a really nice restaurant that a lot of us eat at. Every time they washed clothes, the water went out into the ground, under the basement, into the basement, and every time they showered, it went into the basement. So as you can tell, the basement's full of debris. We haven't resolved that issue yet, but we have resolved the lines. The lines are all hooked up. The third photo that you see is a dumpster that basically sat on a piece of property for about 6 months. It was pre-COVID, and we finally got it removed. Cited the guy in the mayor's court, and we're still working on that. That's a process with this individual. The fourth photo that you see is it's just debris that someone has parked their vehicle up next to, thinking that they could hide their license and all the debris that's hanging out. And that's an alleyway as well. So those are all priority properties. We'll go to the next slide. So here are some code violations, and these are all in the city. These are actual photos. The first photo that you're looking at is used building material, scrap metal, refuse, and rubbish. The second photo is parking restrictions. So this guy parked his vehicle way close to the building, so I couldn't see his registration, and it was untagged. Not on approved service either. And then the third one is grass, trees, grass, and weeds and litter. This guy just didn't mow his property. And then the last photo that you see is of a homeless camp on the city's own property. So a lot of our homeless camps, and there's been multiple ones that I've went on in the last probably 3 weeks. As you can tell in the photo, there is needles. There was drug paraphernalia there. And actually the people that were camping, one of them had a warrant for his arrest. So those are the types of materials that I run into when I run onto a can. The next one is a fence with trash and a recliner. So that would fall under section 50212 and 5023, uncollected rubbish, refuge, preparation, and storage. The second photo is a building that all of you are quite aware of. It's on Canal Street. The individual just kind of let the roof fall off the building. So he's been working on that. He's been issued a warning to remedy that code violation. So exterior maintenance of property and premises condition. The next photo is a vehicle that is inoperable. It's not parked on an approved surface. It does have tags. So we would cite that under 270517. All right. So this has been a big issue in the last couple months. I've been getting a lot of complaints on rentals. So the tenants have been calling in and they've been complaining about certain aspects of the rental unit not being up to standards or up to code. So I've done multiple inspections on rental units in town. So as you're aware, we have a complaint-based rental inspection, meaning the individual will have to come in and fill out a complaint, and they're welcome to do that Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4 o'clock when I'm here.
Does it have to be a tenant either? Anybody can file a complaint?
Tenant or the landlord.
No, to be anybody, I wrote it. Anybody can, any citizen can file a complaint. You can file one. If you stand on the sidewalk and you see a violation of that on a rental, you can file it. You can file a complaint. Any citizen can file a complaint on that. I'll show you that section of the law. It doesn't have to be a tenant.
Well, so if it's somebody else and the tenant and the property owner says, you can't enter, then I'll have to get an administrative warrant.
Yeah, but if you're standing, if a neighbor calls and says, this is wrong, that neighbor, if they can, from a public spot, see that there's something wrong, a violation of that code, that neighbor can file a complaint. Any citizen can file a complaint. That doesn't have to be the tenant.
So this building caught fire in 2019. The tenant came in and filed a complaint. During the inspection, the second floor of the home was boarded off and the tenants were living in the lower floor of the home. So essentially they weren't allowed to enter the top floor and they rented the bottom floor. And this is what we're looking at. So the first photo is the chandelier in the kitchen that had quite a bit of water damage, which is now creating some mold. And then the other three photos are of the fire damage upstairs.
I have a question, since the fire chief's here. When a house catches on fire like that, is there no follow-up from the fire department on like safety in a home or something?
If a home is damaged, if the damage is enough on a home, we have condemned after a fire. This amount of damage was not condemnable. What happened was the homeowner, the property owner, literally just took a piece of plywood, covered up the opening to the top of the stairs, and didn't do anything with it.
I think the issue with this piece of property is the tenants moved out, and then within months, I got a complaint that they moved back in. And I kept watching the house. Debris started collecting around the house, so then I figured, yeah, someone's living there. The tenant, before I could even stop and talk to the tenant, he had called me complaining about the odor of the building. So I contacted the property owner, and it's been damaged. 50% of the building's been damaged. So I talked to the property owner and just gave him an option. I said, you're either going to fix the house or it's going to be condemned. He's in the process of working on the house now. So the top floor of the house, the window was actually knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
And those folks were living downstairs when, and most of the folks that live in a condition like this, you can probably assume yourself maybe have some mental health issues, not a whole lot of money.
Mhm.
So there's tons of this in our city, tons and tons of this. And I can do a rental inspection, but I would have to serve administrative warrants and have probable cause, and all of that takes time. Plus all the other things that I'm trying to do, and there's only one of me, plus I'm doing another half of, I'm doing the administrative part of the job for the city manager. So I'm doing all these jobs.
Yeah, I was just wondering about this one in particular, since clearly there's been a fire, and I'm assuming the fire department was called to put out the fire.
Yes, we extinguished the fire, but the Ohio Fire Code is not, fire safety inspections are not implemented on 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. You actually infringe on people's civil liberties and civil rights when you do that.
So it falls under me, the city code.
Okay.
And right now, we don't have a mandatory rental inspection. So we never know if these properties are like this, unless I get a call from someone saying, hey, there's someone living in this house, you know, the tenant called, hey, we've got the top stories boarded off, we're not allowed to go upstairs, but we're renting the lower story. I have no clue.
Right.
Where do I start getting confused?
Anytime the tenant calls, you don't have to have a warrant. If the tenant invites you into the house, you do not have to have an administrative warrant. So,
All right, we'll go to the next slide. Currently, for this year, 26 properties have been condemned, and so far I've got 6 of them secured.
What is your estimated cost on securing a home? Do you know about what it runs in that area? Just so people know. $500-$600?
If it's a 2-story, if it's got all the windows in it,
Mhm.
it's got,
Just say worst case scenario, what are you thinking?
I'd say right around $750.
And that's just in material, correct?
Yes,
That's not counting the labor hours.
Mhm, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I was talking earlier about criminal trespassing and camping. So these are some folks that's been camping on city property. And I just thought I'd share with you some of the rigging they had. I couldn't understand why they had the camera rigged up to the tree. It was odd.
Camera?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right there.
Like an old school.
There's a
It's
camera.
like a point, or like a, yeah.
There was also a bell on the top of the tree, so I don't know if they had some kind of rigged up line or what they had.
That's the one that was flying the pirate's flag.
Okay.
Then we got some more drug paraphernalia. So this particular case, we went up. One had a warrant. He was arrested. The female was asked to load everything up and put it at the top of the hill so it could get off city property. There were several in-loader buckets of stuff. There was enough tarps there to tarp City Hall. There was also trapping snares, and snares were throughout the woods. Later, we found snares and traps in the woods. So be really careful if you come upon a camp where they know they're trespassing and there's drug use, because there was snares. The last camp that I went to, they were blazing this big, huge bonfire, cooking their fish that they had just caught. So they were burning in the woods.
Where was that camp?
Right out here past, right in front of Washington Hall. What's the little baseball field?
Oh,
Crabtree. Yeah, they were camping on Crabtree.
Wow.
And then they camped on Polly as well.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to some of the community volunteers. If you see a man, an older gentleman going around, he's got clippers in his hands. His name's Rob Ryan. He's going around and he's trimming trees that are over top the sidewalk. He wanted to do that himself. He stops and asks the property owner, hey, would you like to have your tree trimmed? Because it is against city code to have your trees in public right of way. Nancy Schaefer and Lori Blankenship. She also helped clean up flower beds, clean the square, and they've got a little group.
It's one after Schaefer.
And if you want, they call it Green Team. So if you want to join Green Team, please feel free to contact Nancy at nannygoat811@hotmail.com. She said that she would love to get some help. They've got a lot of work ahead of them that they'd like to get done before winter. And then I also want to mention TextMyGov. If citizens can start using TextMyGov, that would be really great. It's 740-265-3858. You text hi, and then you'll get a prompt on, is it a code violation? Is it street? Is it sewer? Is it a tree or a light, street light? And so you can send a photo and your complaint. That's all logged into iWorks, and it's public record. So if someone's called in a complaint, or if they texted a complaint and it's not been taken care of, we can go back and see what's going on with the complaint. Because I get my complaints for code, Jason gets his for street, and Phil gets his for sewer. And we get that data, it's emailed to us. So please try to utilize the TextMyGov. It is on our city webpage as well. I just want to thank all of you for your support. I have my contact information for the citizens. It's administration@cityofnelsonville.com, or you can call me at 740-753-1314, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4 o'clock.
And thank you, Johnny Mack, for your paid volunteering too.
If I could, before we move on, we have a citizen's comment that I'd like to share. It's the only one that I'm showing right now. It is from Miss Vicki McDonald. She said, I want to say we have had a few rains, and all the years I've lived here at this house, this is the first time it's not flooded. Thank you for solving the problem. The road is nice also. The only thing she's concerned about is the sealing of the pavement. Doesn't know if we've notified the company about the sealing. She hates to see it end up full of potholes in a year. So if with her driveway specifically, we put it on the punch list that we did last week, closing out the neighborhood community grant. So it will be addressed. That and a couple other things. We had another neighbor around the corner from her that the berm was just put down incorrectly, so that's going to be cleaned up. And then down at Polly, the camera's up and running. So long story short, we had a couple punch list items from that grant. We're closing it out, and yes, Vicki, we will make sure we get you sealed down there. And then since you're giving out numbers, I'll throw the number out again for police dispatch, 753-1922. And I noticed I got a complaint today that brought awareness. So if you need to talk to a police officer, instead of just coming to the station, please call dispatch first and set up a time. Chief Fitch doesn't want his guys in the station unless they have to be there for paperwork and such, so they will be out patrolling. And if you call dispatch, you can set up either a location to meet or just let them know the time to come back here and be here. That's it for now, sir.
All right. Anything else? Any more questions? Any more comments?
I just encourage anybody that's living in substandard housing and they're being abused by a landlord to call and make that complaint. If you have, if there's something majorly wrong. And we have a list that's pretty exhaustive about what an apartment has to be. So if you feel like you're living in substandard housing, please call. Do away with that need for that search warrant. Because if you call and ask people in your home, you have every right to call and ask people in your home. And I would, if you're under that situation, do something about it. Call and get some help.
Thank you.
One just popped in. Becky, this one's for you. It says, what about the trailer on Dalton Drive that has been vacant for every year? Nothing's been done with it. Do you have an update on that one?
I do. So there has been stuff done with it. She just doesn't see any results yet because the trailer hasn't disappeared. So Jolinda and Jim have taken the trailer owner to court. Because of COVID stuff with the courts, they're in that process of trying to either the lady take it off the property. We did board it up, but anyway, either get rid of it off the property or give it to Jim and Jolinda. There is a tremendous amount of taxes that's owed on the trailer in their trailer court. To try to secure the property, we went and boarded the doors and windows to keep raccoons. I guess there was raccoons going in the trailer. The neighbors were getting several different types of bugs in their house. They sit in the trailer. So we did secure it. It's not removed yet, but it doesn't mean we are ignoring it. It's just various stages of compliance that we have to go through. And it seems like we're ignoring it, but really we're not. When a complaint comes in, I work on it immediately. It takes a little bit of time. If you drive by Toth Drive, you'll be seeing the trailers starting to slowly get dismantled. So we had a lot of complaints on Toth Drive, and with all of your blessings, council's blessings, I was able to get money to remove those trailers. So all those issues take a long time. There's a lot of red tape, and people have rights, and you gotta exhaust those rights almost, and give them time to comply.
Thank you.
Good for down, sir.
We're good to go? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Barber, for your update.
You're welcome.
And like Greg said, if you are living in substandard conditions, please do not hesitate to call us. So, all right, we're moving on to second readings. Ordinance 67-20.
This is not changed, they're just rearranged where everything goes, so I'm gonna read it that way. An ordinance adopting Nelsonville City Code Sections 9.18.01 and 9.18.99, vacant property fees and penalties. Whereas the Nelsonville Planning Commission recommended on August 19, 2020, the adoption of Nelsonville City Code Sections 9.18.01 and 9.18.99, vacant property fees and penalties. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the Nelsonville City Code shall be amended effective January 1st, 2021 to adopt the following. Section 9.18.01, vacant property fees. The fees described in this section are established in order to defray the costs to the city government and community as a whole related to the health, safety, and economic impact of structures which remain vacant for long periods of time, including but not limited to administrative costs for registering and processing the vacant building owner registration form, and for the costs incurred by the city in monitoring the vacant building site. The fees are also structured in order to provide appropriate incentives for owners of vacant property buildings to care for them properly, seek to fill them, and in appropriate cases demolish them. The annually increased fee amounts are intended to absorb the costs incurred by the city for demolition and hazard abatement of or repairs to vacant buildings, as well as the continued normal administrative costs stated above. A, the owner of the vacant building shall pay a fee of $100 with registration of a vacant property. For every consecutive year that the building remains vacant, an annual fee will be assessed at double the previous year's fee, for a maximum annual fee equaling the 5-year fee of $1,600 to be used for the fifth and for all consecutive subsequent years of vacancy. That's not filled. Fifth, and all consecutive years. B, the first annual fee shall be paid at the time the building is registered if the owner successfully restores the building to occupancy or demolishes it in accordance with the applicable city code during the year following registration, and there have been no violations associated with the property The fee shall be refunded less an administrative charge equal to any cost the city has incurred. C, all fees shall be paid in full prior to the issuance of any zoning or demolition permits unless the property is granted an exemption. D, all fees including delinquent fees shall be paid by the owner prior to any transfer of an ownership interest in the vacant building. A lien may be placed on the property to collect delinquent fees. And section 9.18.99 penalties. Absent a showing of good cause if a building is not registered within the time frame required in section B, or the registration is not renewed within 30 days after the expiration of 1 year from the date of the previous registration, a penalty shall be paid in addition to the annual registration fee. The penalty shall be equal to 1/2 of the current annual fee, or $800, whichever is less. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 28th day of September 2020.
Council discussion?
I have some questions, or I actually sent Gary, Hunter some questions about adding exemptions to the code. So things like a property's in probate, and it hasn't been settled yet. Abandoned residential properties that are pending foreclosure, a building, that's for sale and listed with a licensed real estate agent, a single family home, like where somebody lived in it, and then they'll say they go to Florida for 6 months. So it's been vacant for 90 days. So that triggers the vacant property thing. And, or maybe they go to Florida for 9 months and don't come back. So there were just several things I feel like we need to put into the existing code as exemptions.
Yeah, currently there is no.
There are currently no exemptions in the code at all. It's so basically something's vacant for 90 days, you're supposed to register it. And I feel like we need to build in exemptions and also as part of the exemption that somebody could apply to the code enforcement officer, request an exemption, then the code enforcement officer could use that person's past history. So do they have other properties that are vacant and maybe falling apart? Or do they have other properties that are vacant but they take care of them, and they're restoring properties in town? The length of time that a building's going to be exempt. So, I buy a property, I'm going to do a full restoration on a big, let's say stately house that still exists in Nelsonville, but that's gonna take a year to 18 months. So I would want an exemption for that. I think that those things are important so that we encourage what we're actually trying to do, which is have people restore, replace our housing stock and not just let things fall apart.
There's another one that then you were talking about. Right now we have banks that somebody goes belly up on a mortgage and the bank doesn't name an agent, and we're really powerless to make them name an agent. But if a local agent was named that you could work with, you could maybe get that place donated to the land bank or some way that you have somebody to work with. Right now, the banks are just playing hardball and not even talking to you. So I think if there was a way to I think it doesn't help us to say that the agent has to be the local or Athens or Hocking County. I think if we had somebody we could work with, we could say, hey, look, we can get this off your hands, just give it to the land bank or because I don't think these banks really look at that as any asset. It's just a pain to them. So I would suggest that this goes back in your committee and you work those things out and get them all worked out. And because we got an ordinance that's talking about exemptions and we don't even have exemptions. And this has been in effect since what, 2015?
Yeah, vacant property, the registration is required already. Like,
Right.
you're supposed to register a vacant property. What this is just doing is attaching a fee to it.
Right, and there's not been any, 7 or 8 people that's registered with it being free, and if we put a big fee on it, is it gonna, are we gonna be able to get people to work with us to try to get some of these properties into the land bank and get them, get them dealt with? So I think you've done a bang-up job of taking that apart, and I think that your committee needs a little bit of time to rewrite it and get it back in good shape and pass the ordinance and the fees all in one shot.
I think we should add to the current code that we have, not this one, but add to the vacant property and put the exemptions in the vacant property and mention that if you pay the vacant property fees, or you don't pay it, this is why, this is your exemption. So right now, in the current vacant property code, there is exemptions, meaning the exemptions that's currently in there. If a building has, if it's a triplex and there's 2 people in the building and the third one is, say,
It has to be more than 50% vacant,
yeah.
or so but it's very,
So if you have a triplex and you got 2, it's a rental, it's a triplex, one of them needs work and 2 of them is being rented out, they're exempt. So I mean, it doesn't say this, and this is exempt. You have to actually read the code, like most law. You have to decipher it. It doesn't spell it out, A, B, C, or D.
The triplex is the only one I could find, the only exempt I could find. I mean, you can't exempt without the authority to exempt something. You can't go ahead and say, all right, you're trying, so we're gonna exempt you. There has to be, the exemptions have to be in the
I
ordinance.
think it needs to be in the
Oh, yeah, you're right
code
about
that's
that.
already been
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
books.
Is that
and
titled
leave it out of this
exemptions?
new
That-
stuff.
Is that section titled
No.
exemptions?
no, there's nothing titled exemptions in the current code.
So I think whoever created this code wasn't really using it the way it's intended to be used for a vacant property. I think it's, okay, let's do a vacant property code, but let's do nothing with it. Let's not encourage a person that has a vacant building, use it because vacant properties, registering them in a city is supposed to be used for compliance. So everything code does is get compliance, get the person to start working on the building, get the person to get it rented out, get the person to either sell it. So my number one job is not to cite people, it's to try to get people to work right along the side of me to get this taken care of. I don't think the code, when it was written, was really written to be used in the manner that I want to use it in, which is to gain compliance to have a better community.
Right.
I think somebody found a code and copied and pasted it. And I think that you and Elizabeth and her committee can get that worked out pretty quick and get those exemptions in the code and pass the code and the fee.
I do, and I apologize, because we did talk about this briefly in committee, but it had already been gone through planning commission, and we were kind of coming in at the end of it, and it wasn't until I've had time to kind of sit on it, really read the code, and think about
I think you
like
did
what the
bang up.
holes are in it. So, as we all know, my big thing is trying to think ahead is what are people gonna look for loopholes or reasons that it doesn't apply to them or whatever. And I feel like that we need to be very clear in the code for doing that, especially for asking people to pay a fee, and we need to give people a way to apply for those exemptions, or that they meet the exemption for one of these other reasons. So for that reason, I mean, I would like to say, can we refer this back to committee to have it tweaked a little bit?
Your motion is to table.
Okay, so my motion is the table.
I'll second. And I want to say that I think Elizabeth did a bang-up job taking that apart. I emailed her and asked her for the ordinance because I wanted to read it, and she come back with a whole email explaining all these things. I'm thinking, man, you're just new on council. You just did one heck of a job, and I want to thank you for that. I think it was really good job.
Are you looking to add these exemptions though into this particular ordinance? Or?
Well, it would amend the code,
That's a whole different.
The
ordinance.
existing
the
ordinance. would be a
existing,
whole
yeah,
nother-
so that's why I'd asked Gary, I mean, there are other things, but I think that, because Becky just got us the information about the cost and the fees, so I
Taxes
think,
and-
yeah.
So this isn't gonna start till January 1st, so can we pass this and then
We
start?
still have time, I guess I would feel like I would like to table this, take it back to committee, and then we still have time to get it passed and have it going on January 1st. Since that's the timeline we're working on anyway.
Cause I need a good month, like I do the rental registrations, to get it out to people.
There
We
shouldn't be
have-
any problem getting it done by January 1st.
We have a meeting, well, our next
For me,
meeting's
to get it
scheduled for
out to
October
people
7th,
before
Well,
I
January
think.
1st.
Should take around
Well,
12 weeks.
So
No, no,
your,
no,
so
our-
your
our
existing
planning-
code, the existing
Yeah,
code needs
right.
to be amended for the exemptions.
And then we can, if you
This
get,
doesn't address, this just has exemptions. Then you'd have to revert back to the original
Yeah.
code that has the exemptions in it.
I personally would feel more comfortable having the exemptions in place, passing that and the fee at the same
so
time.
we can do this. So we can have a committee meeting, bring that forth.
I'm confident, I
And
feel
then,
confident that we
and
don't.
then the next meeting pass it on emergency and be done. with
Well, we
no
don't even think we need to pass it on emergency. We're meeting on October 7th, which is before our next council meeting. So if we're able to pull it together in that committee and have the ordinance drafted, you know, we could have that, the first reading of that on October 12th. And then the second reading for the exemptions and all that stuff to pass on October, whatever our second meeting is.
But then it takes 30 days, doesn't it take 30 days for
So
it?
you're still in November, they've
So
got
we're
a
still in
30
November
day.
and that it's to go into effect January 1st. So we still have time.
So as long as I have it done before December 1st, so I
Yeah.
can, we're researching everything, but we've got to get this stuff sent out to people and give them a little bit of time. Now, one of the things that I am asking is if we could keep the exemptions in the original code, so that way when you're a property owner and your property is vacant, you could go in the code and read everything. And then it refers to the next section, which is the fees. So I'd like to have all that stuff as close as I can possibly get it. So if you're a customer, you want to be able to be informed instead of researching where all this stuff is all through the code book or online.
Yeah, so right now, the only exemption, so all it says about exemption, it doesn't even say that, it says, in case, under definition, under C, vacant building, an unoccupied building for 90 days or more, and then it says, in case of structures containing multiple dwellings, and buildings shall be considered vacant when a majority of the units are unoccupied.
Yeah,
That's all it says
We have
now.
a very weak code when it comes
Yeah.
to vacant properties. and I
Yeah,
think
so that's what I
why
want
we
to do,
have
is
a
I
lot of
want to strengthen it
vacant structures.
with different, you know, and fill in the holes. I just feel like there's things missing.
If I may, real quick, just a concern from a citizen, just to address the buildings that the college owns. So, nothing for here, but just,
Well, I think that would be a question for our code enforcement officer. This is residential, commercial, whatever, but I guess I hear what you're saying, like, what buildings does the college own that would be vacant?
They would be referred to the mentioned building.
I got bad news for you, and I think Gary will tell you that Athens has tried for years to do code on OU and not been able to, so.
So, and that might
You're
be.
tax exempt, not code exempt.
There it is.
I do code on Hocking College and get compliance with Dr. Young.
Yeah.
And her board members gives me compliance. So what was the question?
Just what about the buildings of the college?
No, it's just
Okay, well, they're
stating
not
that
exempt,
Right, that's
so
what-
it would
yeah.
apply unless you want the exempt. If the committee wants to exempt,
I wouldn't think so. I mean, and I think we covered this pity, but my fear would be, right? I mean, the college could buy a bunch of buildings up and then have them sit vacant
and
and
stay vacant
and
because
stay
they're
vacant,
exempt.
and that's what we're trying to get away from. We're trying to get buildings,
That's gonna have to be a call by the law
and-
director.
you know.
Well, the exemption issue down in Athens dealt with zoning issues because their zoning code has an exemption for the governmental buildings, governmental agencies. I think our zoning code doesn't have that in it. I don't
No.
think so. So it's probably a little bit different ballgame up here. I will tell you, you've got a motion in a second that probably should be voted on, but you need to make up your mind where you want the penalties. Years ago, we had the penalties following the sections, and I thought that was the best place for them. And then we had a council that wanted to pull all the penalties out and put them in a separate place in the code so they could be amended all at one time.
So now it sounds like they're going back to putting the penalties in the thing. We're getting ready to do the recodification, so if that's the pleasure of council, we want to go back and pick up those and put them back in the section.
Why shouldn't the penalty be in?
I believe it should be with it. I
It's
should believe it should be
easier to
right
read
below.
when the penalty-
Is that your recommendation, it'd be in the code itself, all of them?
Well, they are in the code, they were just.
I meant in the section itself.
Yeah, that was always my feeling, but
Well,
if you remember.
Let's go back to that on the recodification.
I like that idea.
I think the permit fees need to be on a separate ordinance. I think that way you can change it as you go, you can change it year by year or whatever, or 2 years. The penalties, I think, belong in the section, so that way
I've
the
always
code
felt that way.
officer, police officer, it's friendly that way.
You have a motion second, right?
Okay, let's, we got a motion on the floor that is seconded to table the matter. Call the roll, man.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
No,
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going here to ordinance 72-20. Oh, I skipped it, sorry. Oh, yeah, that little thing. Okay, ordinance 71-20.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager and city auditor to sign a police department truck purchase agreement. Whereas the police department needs to purchase a truck. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city manager and the city auditor are authorized to execute an agreement to purchase a truck for the police department for $38,000 with $5,000 down and $5,000 for upgrades, with the remainder to be paid over 3 years. This ordinance shall be effective at the earliest date permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 28th day of September 2020.
Is this the way this was read the first time?
No.
We amended.
We
it.
amended
it.
it. Amended it.
Yeah.
Amended it during.
Because it was,
Any council discussion on this matter?
so is this under emergency as far as, or we gotta wait 30 days for maturity?
Well, it's, without an emergency, you wait 30 days. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to put an emergency on.
What do you mean suspension?
Well, so today's
Yeah.
second reading, but for 30 days,
Yeah, you would have to have an emergency, yeah. Is there a reason it has to be?
Yes, so our sale, our current price that we have it at, the existing rebates associated through Chevy expire when Thursday,
first.
on the first.
so we need to get her done.
Well, if you add an emergency, then you'll have to add suspension because we'll take it back to first reading.
Okay.
Motion to suspend that.
Well, first you
Yeah,
add the
first you gotta-
emergency. motion to add the
Amend?
emergency.
Motion to add the emergency.
But yeah, okay,
Okay,
second.
you made the motion.
We have Tony say. That's what he wants.
Okay, Tony. Okay.
What'd you
Are
say
we
the
ready
bids
now?
expired?
You're ready to call the roll, ma'am.
On October 1st.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes,
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Motion to suspend.
motion to suspend.
Second.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes,
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt.
Second.
You're fine.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes,
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
You must call
Look,
it
look right here. Look.
No, no.
Kim was
Yes.
I abstain.
Mr. Smith?
No.
You missed me.
No, I didn't.
Miss-
Ms. Jones?
Yes. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Ordinance 72-20.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager, city auditor, and city attorney to sign the public defender contract. Whereas the city and Athens County contract for public defender service annually. Whereas the city desires to authorize the city manager, city auditor, and city attorney to sign these routine contracts without further specific authorization from city council, as long as the contract terms do not change and the funds are appropriated. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city manager, city auditor, and city attorney are authorized to execute the public defender contract attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference henceforth from 2019, as long as the contract terms do not change and the funds are appropriated. This ordinance shall be effective at the earliest date permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 28th day of September 2020.
Any council discussion on this?
Can I just ask a question? Gary, when the next contract comes up, do we need to bring another one? Or I just can't tell by the reading of this.
Oh, no, we don't need to bring it for council approval unless as long as council appropriates the money for it.
Okay.
But
So,
even there would just be a matter of appropriating the money anyway.
okay. 'Cause it should
Contracts
be-
they haven't changed in years.
Right. I just know another one will come probably.
I know,
By December?
that's the reason we're doing this, because the county's doing these every 6 months now.
Yeah.
so we want to-
Right, that's why it says henceforth from 2019, so it's like 2019 on, you're good.
Yeah.
Motion to adopt?
Second?
Second.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Moving on. Ordinance 74-20, I need someone to introduce it.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to invoice resident and non-resident individuals, businesses, and entities for environmental leakage spills and cleanup expense and declaring an emergency. Whereas periodically the environmental leakage spills and cleanup expense occurs that is caused by resident and non-resident individuals, business, and entities. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city manager on behalf of the city of Nelsonville is hereby authorized to invoice resident and non-resident individuals, businesses, and entities for environmental leakage, spills, and cleanup expense when the city of Nelsonville incurs expense in correcting the leakage, spills, and cleanup. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 731.30, because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that billing can be implemented as soon as possible, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules on the 28th day of September 2020.
Any council discussion on this?
This is related to our big leak
Yes.
earlier this week.
Yes.
It's actually bigger than that. We've had, since I've been here, we've had a couple other leaks and issues, mainly sewer issues. Real quick story, we had a property down on Patton Street that was improperly capped, and a flood event or two ago, I forget which one, but the sewer actually backed up and flooded down there and created a whole mess. We had to go down there and take care of that. And then, of course, the event the other day. So it actually happened more so than you would think.
Okay. All right.
Motion to suspend?
I'll second that.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes. Motion to adopt?
Call the roll.
Okay.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes. Okay. Ordinance 75-20, need someone to introduce it.
There it is.
Okay, hope I get this right. Okay. An ordinance amending the 2020 appropriations ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance the following: the sum of $6,000 from general fund number 100 to line item number 100-200-50012, vehicle and repair, and $2,900 from the general fund number 100 to line item number 100-624-33013, City Hall. Whereas the appropriations ordinance needs to be amended to appropriate monies for various needs. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio. What?
2,425.
They're in the
I
body.
added it
Down the
together.
bottom.
That's
We'll correct the title later.
Yeah, okay. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Adams County, Ohio, as follows. The 2020 appropriations are amended to appropriate the following sums from the unappropriated balance to the designated line items. The sum of $6,000 from the general fund, number 100, to line item number 100-200-50012, vehicle and repair. $1,200 from the general fund, number 100, to line item number 100-64-33113, City Hall. Oh, no, you just told me it was separate. Excuse me, we're going back to the second one. $2,900 from general fund, number 100, to line item number 100-624-33013, City Hall. The total appropriations are increased by said amount. This ordinance shall become effective at the earliest date provided by law, duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules, the 20th day of September 2020. I was trying to read that.
Just move to amend it to add the $2,000 for the K-9 fund, which is, what is it, Taylor, 425?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's also, there were two additional appropriations. One was within the city hall, we just increased that appropriation. And the other is that there was more money received, $2,000 more from
Right.
K-9 fund.
So does one of us need to motion to amend to include the 2,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to amend.
What was what fund did the city hall come out of?
It's there, it's the same one.
I know, but I don't have the printing of it.
Oh, 100 fund, general fund 100, 624. Right, Taylor?
33013.
I know, we concerned about the general fund.
Okay.
Got a motion to amend?
Motion to amend to add the $2,000.
Second.
What fund is that from?
425, the K-9 fund.
Okay, that's the donation.
That's the donation. Yeah, that's the, yeah.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
I second that.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 76-20, need someone to introduce it?
I'll introduce it.
An ordinance making both water clerk positions full-time. Whereas the water department clerk's office currently has one full-time clerk and one part-time clerk, and the city desires to make the positions full-time. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city hereby makes the two water department clerk positions full-time. This ordinance shall be effective at the earliest date provided by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 12th day of October 2020.
Any discussion on this?
I would like, before the second reading, to know how much money is left on the books that hasn't been collected, and how much doing this is going to cost annually. Before, if I could get that information before the next second reading.
We presented that information to the finance committee, both of those numbers, and I mean, I can speak off memory and say, just since the question was brought up, that the balance of debt has been lowered by over $56,000 in about 45 days. And we're trucking on through a closed account water debt right now, with $7,000 billed today. This is, of course, money that's been billed, that's just since it's out on the books. And then I can get you the cost breakdowns as well.
Well, I want to remind everybody that we bought an employee out and paid the whole year's salary to get this down to one position. What, 2 years ago? Or maybe, and
longer than that.
That's not this position, though.
well, we had two people in the water office, and we bought one of those people out in order to get it down to one person. And we paid a whole year's salary to buy that person out, plus PERS that went on top of that, and all our other retirement fees.
So you did, so actually, as somebody who took part in that vote, you took Mrs. Anderson's position, which was deputy auditor, and combined it with the income tax position, which was Stephanie Wilson. You didn't buy out Judy or Robert, who were both the water and sewer folks. Now, my predecessor did not do much work on combining those operations and making sure there's cross-training so that there's an understanding between employees that we can do more than just the tasks sitting in front of us. But we worked really hard this year to do so, so that Cindy can, for example, jump from water billing to assisting with accounts payable pretty much in 5 minutes.
I've had to raise water rates sitting here, and I don't like it. And I think it's raising rates that we don't need to raise. And I know there's options to collect bills, like collection agencies, that will probably be cheaper than making another employee full-time. But if we have to do family insurance, we're talking big numbers. So
We've already discussed these numbers in finance.
I know you've discussed them. I would like to know what they
Well, then,
are.
come to a finance meeting.
And you
But
can,
also,
you can live stream the finance.
Order,
But
one at a
this
time.
is also, she's not gonna only be doing collections, we're gonna be adding to the job duties by bringing her on full-time. So she's gonna be providing more service to the citizens of this community.
And I'm not sure that it can't be done with the amount of labor that's already there, and you're gonna have to convince me otherwise, and I don't think you can. I go back a long time when one girl sat out in the water office.
Well, to be fair, Greg, you've never run an auditor's office, and I'm running one right now. And I think we can add the services.
Well, you've already had a half-time position added, and now we're gonna be up to 4. And I don't see it.
No, there hasn't been a half-time position added at all, actually. What we did was root out a terrible employee.
You're at 3.5 people right now, and you wanna go to 4, and I think that's.
There was 4 when I took over.
Well,
That's true.
That's true.
There was 4 when I took over. One of them was just terrible and doing things against the city that cost us. And what I'm trying to do, instead of cost the city, is add to the city services, because as I've explained to my employees in our new weekly meetings, the function of my office is to fund the services that these folks, like Mr. Barber, provide, and that you guys come up with ideas to do for the citizens. We don't have any other say other than to fund them. And
out of the water and sewer fund to people's water bills.
we're
so
fortunate.
why do you
that
want to
Cindy-
threaten water bills? I mean, we haven't fixed infrastructure because you haven't raised the water bills.
Okay, everyone.
I'm not
Are these
against-
employees at will, or,
No.
employees, they're not union, right? So like, if we would have to do a reduction in force, why would we buy somebody out?
These are union employees.
These are union, they're union employees
Yes.
in a water office,
Yes.
so they're not administrative employees.
So
Not,
just the clerk.
not a clerk is not, no.
Just the clerk position the positions are union, the deputy auditor and auditor, of course, are not.
You're gonna raise one people's water bills to do other duties.
Well, if you're not gonna fix the infrastructure, that's.
I'm for raising water bills to fix
You just said you
infrastructure.
weren't.
I'm not for raising water bills and spending the money
I'm not
when you
sure
don't
that-
need to spend it.
Okay, guys, this is
If I could
first
offer-
reading.
If I could offer, I don't think that's the choice in front of you, because the cost of the position of somebody who on paper costs more than what Judy costs, but then off the books cost us tremendously over the last few years. I don't believe that after Judy has already taken the position with more responsibility for less pay, as we asked her to do, I don't believe that the choice is that you have to take more money from others because we've created efficiencies in the job already. So we have folks over there making sacrifices for each other, and I don't think you've ever stopped and asked them what it looks like. So if you would, I mean, I think there's a lot to talk about here, and just consider it before you say we're gonna raise people's water rates.
Well, Taylor, you're talking about
But
taking
that's
the,
how we deal with, we just threaten. That's all we
you're
do.
now talking about taking money from the water and sewer fund, which is a proprietary fund, to do work which is not work that needs to be done in the water sewer fund, other duties. I'm not convinced, from way back, when one girl used to sit in the office and do all the billing by hand and do all the collection by hand, that we need two people in water and sewer.
Okay,
And that's what we're talking about doing. We're talking about raising water,
Okay.
people's water bill.
all right, now, this is first reading, council discussion. Greg has his concerns. You get the figures to him, and we'll discuss this at the second reading.
That's good for me.
All right. And now we are to the big one. We are to,
No, no.
We got two left.
we got two left.
77.
77,
Yeah, 77 listed.
77,
77 cents?
yeah, 77, 20.
Yeah, where is it?
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
It's the mysterious one.
You don't have it?
It's listed as 78 on here, was that, which is it?
It's 77-20.
I mean, 77?
Yeah.
Susan, or 78? On the agenda, it says 78.
Which one? What are you
This
talking
one right
about?
here,
Yeah, 77.20.
77.
The agenda
That's
says
77.
78.
Well, 77, and then this one for Wood Lane Drive is 78.
Okay,
All right.
so 77.20.
All right. Ordinance 77-20, I need someone to introduce it.
I'll introduce it.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute change order number 3 for pump station trunk sewer of the Nelsonville Regional Sewer Collection System and declaring an emergency. Whereas cost plans have been made by the contractor and approved by the project engineer in the amount of $252,574, change order number 3. Whereas there are sufficient contingency funds in the Nelsonville City contract of the Phase 1 Regional Collection System to fund these change orders with the current financing. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city manager is authorized to execute change order number 3 for pump station trunk sewer of Phase 1 of the Nelsonville Regional Sewer Collection System for $252,574 in accordance with Exhibit A attached here to and incorporated herein by reference. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the change order can be implemented as soon as possible during the construction project, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules, the 28th day of September 2020.
Any council discussion on this one?
Mr. Betts.
So is this in our?
Mr. Betts is here to answer the questions, so if you would, please enlighten us.
Yeah, I can give you a quick description too, quick question. So this change order addresses two issues that have arose during the construction of the project along Chestnut Street in particular. The first is the Brick Street, and council has already acted on legislation to repurpose those bricks to memorialize their use in a sidewalk. So this addresses the replacement for that, and that's the asphalt pavement. As you all know, that have seen the construction site, there were sections, significant sections where the entire roadway was lost due to the subsoil conditions and the width of the excavation. So this will provide asphalt pavement for the length of Chestnut Street in the project area from 4th down to Canal. as well as, so that's a 6-inch gravel base and 6 inches asphalt on top of that, so it'll be a totally new road surface. That's one component. The second is the existing 4-inch water line that was encountered during construction. There's actually a 10-inch water line that we've encountered, a 4-inch that we've encountered numerous times. And then when the excavation grew to the width it did in the worst areas there, the water line was breaking daily. Crews would stop their work, talk to the city folks would fix the leak, then they'd resume. And the water would all pour into the trench while they're doing it. After days of that, the contractor took it upon themselves to run a temporary water line along that route so they could get the sewer installed and with the hopes of getting this work completed here before the end of paving season. They are going to hopefully reach that last manhole at 4th Street this week. And if approved by council tonight, they're going to order the water line materials tomorrow so they can get that en route. This will add 2 weeks to the contract time to install this water line. But instead of, what it does, instead of putting back a century-old water line that's been broken several places, a totally new 4-inch plastic PVC water line from 4th down to about Seine, where the 10-inch takes over, and then 10 down to where we had not disturbed it. So the water line will be all new in the location.
Does that include taps as well?
Taps to the pit. So the new service lines will be to the pit and totally out of the pavement.
Nice, wonderful.
Just to reiterate, so this is that recoverable money? Is that recoverable?
From the contractor?
Contingent.
From,
Project.
what's
It's project funds,
the
I think.
EPA or something like that gonna jump in?
Yeah, so I've already gotten approval from the EPA to fund it out of the contingency, yes, sir.
Okay.
And on that note, we've got currently 437 in contingency funds, so we're to the point that, this is kind of what I'd call an owner requested change order. We want this work done as part of the project, right? This is where I'd stop that, because we're getting close enough to exhausting our contingency funds at this point.
Okay.
All right, and I do have their approval saying they will fund this.
Okay, so do you foresee any other big contingencies on
Not
this
big,
part of
we've
it?
got some small issues on the other project that we're gonna need to resolve, power issues here, quantity. So at the end of each project, we'll do a final balancing change order for the installed quantities. We get the bid prices at bid time for the quantities. And then at the end, some will be under, some will be over. We have run into extra quantity out along Carbon Hill Bookta Road on storm sewer that's coming out to be significant, $20,000–$30,000, but nothing beyond that.
Now, just to be clear, we also have an ordinance in place that underneath our roadways now, we're getting a CDF fill,
Yes,
not just
so
gravel.
Jason and Scott agreed to, with this new road construction, utilize the 304 and then the asphalt as proposed on top of that. So
It's a deeper base.
it's a deeper base, and it's not a trench patch, so to speak. It's a full width pavement.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As long as it meets compaction.
The only thing I might ask, also, Michael, is, for the folks down there that have lost their sidewalks and curbs, I know you and I have addressed it and we know it's gonna get fixed, but if you could just share with council.
Yeah, so in preparation for this, obviously, there's some work outside the current scope is proposed, sidewalks and curb, and in the widest area where the front steps had actually moved away from the one home due to the excavation. So I talked to the contractor about that with this very point in mind. We don't want additional change order requests to address these issues that were part of, resulting from the excavation.
Sure.
And they've agreed to remedy those disturbances through that worst area and anywhere really where they've lost the curbs at their fault with the excavation. So that's on them, and they've indicated to me they're going to take care of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes. Motion adopted.
Second.
And Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
All right. Ordinance Ordinance 78-20. Someone to introduce it.
I'll introduce it.
The following is an ordinance enacted by the city of Nelsonville of Athens County, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the local public agency or LPA. Section 1, project description. Whereas the city of Nelsonville has determined the need for the described project, bridge replacement project on Athens Wood Lane Drive, begin work 0.30 miles west of Carbon Hill Road in the city of Nelsonville, funded through the Municipal Bridge Program. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville of Athens County, Ohio, Section 2, consent statement. Being in the public interest, the LPA gives consent to the Director of Transportation to complete the above described project as detailed in the LPA ODOT let agreement entered into between the parties, if applicable. Section 3, cooperation statement. The LPA shall cooperate with the Director of Transportation in the development and construction of the above described project and shall enter into an LPA federal ODOT let project agreement, if applicable, as well as any other agreements necessary to develop and construct the project. The city does hereby propose to assume and contribute the entire cost and expense of the improvement, less the amount of federal aid funds set aside by the Director of Transportation for financing this improvement from funds allocated by the Federal Highway Administration, U.S. Department of Transportation. And further, the city agrees to bear 100% of the cost of the following items. 1, rights of way. 2, all costs for added construction items generating extra work contracts under Ohio laws, unless performance is approved by the state of Ohio and Federal Highway Administration before work is authorized. The LPA further agrees to pay 100% of the cost of those features requested by the LPA, which are determined by the state and Federal Highway Administration to be unnecessary for the project. The LPA further agrees that change orders and extra work contracts required to fulfill the construction contract shall be processed as needed. The state shall not approve a change order or extra work contract until it first gives notice in writing to the LPA. The LPA shall contribute its share of the cost of these items in accordance with other sections herein. The LPA agrees that if federal funds are used to pay the cost of any consultant contract, the LPA shall comply with 23 CFR 172 in the section of its consultant and administration of the consultant contract. Further, the LPA agrees to incorporate ODOT specifications for consulting services as a contract document in all of its consultant contracts. The LPA agrees to require as a scope of service clause that all plans prepared by the consultant must conform to ODOT current design standards and that the consultant shall be responsible for ongoing consultant involvement during the construction phase of the project. The LPA agrees to include a complete schedule acceptable to ODOT and to assist ODOT in rating the consultant's performance through ODOT's consultant evaluation system. Section 4, authority to sign. The city of Nelsonville hereby authorizes the city manager of said city of Nelsonville, Ohio, to enter into and execute contracts with the Director of Transportation, which are necessary to develop plans for and to complete the above described project, and to execute contracts with ODOT pre-qualified consultants for the preliminary and engineering phase of the project. Upon request of ODOT, the Nelsonville City Manager is also empowered to execute any appropriate documents to effect the assignment of all rights, title, and interests of the City of Nelsonville, Ohio to ODOT arising from agreement with its consultant in order to allow ODOT to direct additional or corrective work, recover damages due to errors or omissions, and to execute all other contractual rights and remedies afforded by law or equity. Section 5, utilities and right-of-way statements. The LPA agrees that all right-of-way required for the described project will be acquired and or made available in accordance with the current state and federal regulations. The LPA also understands that right-of-way costs include eligible utility costs. The LPA agrees that all utility accommodation, relocation, and reimbursement will comply with the current provisions of 23 CFR 645 and the ODOT Utilities Manual. Section 6, maintenance. Upon completion of the project, and unless otherwise agreed, the LPA shall, 1, provide adequate maintenance for the project in accordance with all applicable state and federal law, including but not limited to Title 23 USC Section 116. And 2, provide ample financial provisions as necessary for the maintenance of the project. 3, maintain the right-of-way, keeping it free of obstructions. And 4, hold said right-of-way inviolate for public highway purposes. Section 7, emergency measure. This ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure to expedite the highway project and to promote highway safety. The following legislative act it shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its passage and approval. Otherwise, it shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
Okay, council discussion on this?
This is what?
I don't think I
That's the
caught that.
bridge.
Can you read that again?
It's the bridge, it says, bridge replacement.
Whenever ODOT does these contracts,
That's
it's
the
full.
one.
Yeah, that was something else.
Yeah, I remember when.
Michael,
Do we need to suspend this?
yeah.
Yes.
Motion to suspend.
Well, I think Michael needs to explain it, I think, for the public consumption.
Oh.
Well, so I can do some explaining. I'm not going to be as thorough because I'm not the project manager on this, but being a representative from Stantec, I can certainly do that. This started back in 18. The bridge was identified by ODOT on their municipal bridge list to qualify for the program, which has traditionally been 80% grant funded. They were applying additional credits they had and funding them at 95% for construction and their services during construction. They'll have a consultant out there doing the inspection and stuff. So they fund that. The catch is the LPA, local public authority, is on the hook for the upfront design. We have completed that. We did a portion in 19, and then we're authorized to finish that up in 20. In fact, the city just paid our last 2 invoices. I think we might have a very small under $50 one left. So it's being shipped to ODOT and is ready for them to run. I thought the questions would primarily revolve around the schedule, so I dug out their schedule. And they're looking at selling the project for bid January 14th and starting construction April 1st and completing construction August 1st, all in 21 there. So,
Michael, you might indicate the anticipated cost and then the city's cost.
yes, so per the agreement, the total cost that's being participated by ODOT is $636,339.79. So they're paying 95% of that. 5% portion is $31,816.99 left. And those are based on construction estimates, so that may fluctuate one way or another, hopefully down. And the city's already spent $83,769. Well, that was our contract, it's just under that, a tick, but they've got that vested in the project so far.
And they won't need to appropriate the money until 2021.
For construction, yes, correct.
So our construction end is 37,000.
32.
But you don't have to appropriate it this year for sure.
Besides that last invoice, do you anticipate any other engineering invoices in 2020? Because our line item is close to run out.
Just like I mentioned, the $50, that's it.
Okay, that should be it. Okay.
Just for everyday's consumption, will traffic be maintained or will Wood Lane be closed?
It'll be closed.
So,
Closed from April 1st to August 1st.
We sent out
2021.
notices already to the sheriff, the school, and of course our police and fire as well.
Okay. All right, that base is covered.
Yeah, the detour will be the same as that was implemented for the split.
Okay,
Motion to suspend.
I'll second that.
Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
Second?
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Peck?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes. Okay. Moving on. City managers report.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I have a fair amount to get through, so I'll do my best to get through it. The first thing, if you may or may not have seen on social media, our new officer, Attila, is in training with Officer Jones. And as far as I know, everything is going well. He brought Attila in last Friday to say hello to everyone, which was very nice. Also, tomorrow, our new clerk, the part-time clerk in PD starts, Miss Mount. And she'll be down there 32 hours a week. Not to rehash old stuff, but just to make public record, we did receive a refund for the remaining amount of money this year that we paid into the 911 contract. And I just want to say that I did not remove us from the contract. We are still, as far as I'm concerned, a part of the contract, even though they refunded the money. No notice was written, and I don't even believe I have the authority to do so without council action.
Did you get a response from your email the other day?
Negative. Crickets. So,
Did we cash that check or did we send it back?
Well, we currently have it today. I don't know of very many examples, unless it's written to the wrong person or entity, that we're not required to cash it and then write a refund back. But
Are we gonna have a executive session?
Yes.
I wanna talk about threatened lawsuits and include that.
but we're under requirement.
Let's do it in executive session.
alrighty. Moving on. So the first is, I'll talk about the fire department real quick. They led I'm sure everybody heard about 2 weeks ago, we had the major oil spill that ended up being documented as 20 gallons. It was quite a mess. Our folks, the entire crew was out there, police, fire, and the street department. We had lots of assets out there. We had dump trucks, front end loaders, hauling sand. Fire was out there, PD was out there. And a total of and then in Frumpke, folks as well showed up. And a total of 5,200 pounds of oil dry was spread across the lanes and cleaned up. It started around 11 in the morning and got done about 10 at night. Great job by all the crews. Hocking PD was there as well. So everybody worked well together, and they did a really good job on that. Good news on fire hydrants. When I started, we had 19 out of service hydrants. Currently, we have 2 hydrants that are going to be repaired, not replaced, but repaired. And we have 3 left to change out. And then we will be done with hydrants. Also, I don't think we mentioned it when Michael Betts was talking, but I believe there's 3 hydrants being changed on Chestnut Street in the work zone as well.
Correct.
So there was 3 hydrants being done there, plus there was 3 in the neighborhood revitalization grant. So all in all, really good improvement as far as hydrants go. Already working with Chief Barber to identify hydrants for next year to replace as well. Not that they're out of service now per se, but if we were to go out and do a whole lot of work with them, I want to have available resources in hand to replace those if needed. So good news on the fire hydrants. Just wanted to put out there about the utilities crew. They've had an incredibly busy 2 weeks in addition to their normal duties throughout the day. They've had, of course, the oil spill, which generated overtime, and then they had a water leak on Scenic Lane, on Walnut Street, and then, of course, that massive water leak down on Jackson Street. So those folks up there have been putting in a lot of extra work, and they've done a really good job. And so far, so good for a quieter. I won't finish that statement because they'll kill me.
Scenic Lane in the city?
For water service. The civil service position I forwarded a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know if that's something that we wanted to act on now as another name to put them on.
I think we have to in order to get our scheduling in for.
Yeah, make the recommendation.
What's
Okay,
your recommendation?
let me read it real quick. So,
Because Gary's got to get us sworn in.
So I recommend Ms. Sheree McLaughlin. I'll share her letter. She said, "I'm writing to express my interest in joining the Civil Service Committee. I've recently moved to Nelsonville and like to get involved in the community. I'm ready to settle into the new area and help out any way I can. My children are all grown and I found myself with a lot of free time." And then she gave her phone number.
What's her name again?
Sheree McLaughlin. Oh, sorry, McLaughlin.
Isn't that what you said?
If you said that.
Okay.
I did, when she sent the letter, I did look, she is registered, and I'll make the motion, we accept your recommendation.
Second that.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes. We need other positions too, so.
Scott, can you spell the name for me?
Cherie. Last name McLauglin.
Thank you.
And now that we have the three for the Civil Service Commission, Gary, I'll get with you to get them sworn in. We need to order tests and schedule tests immediately for PD and FD.
Okay.
And then the last thing I have is an update on Church Street. And the Church Street update is that it's been approved finally by the EPA. They should announce it by October 5th. At that point, then Michael can move forward on his piece. The big takeaway that we got that was not approved was they did not approve any addition of guardrail on Church Street. So any addition of guardrail, which was Councilwoman Grant, that was a specific request from her, we would have to do out of Hyde. Jason's currently putting together a couple quotes of what that would look like, and then we'll get those quotes back to you folks for decision.
Is there any, this might be a stupid question, but I'll go ahead and ask it. A lot of times you see ODOT contractors replacing guardrail. Is there any way that maybe we could get our hands on some of that?
So we have a little bit now, and we definitely can call in favors to get a hold of more.
Yeah.
Just no guarantees on that.
I know, a lot of times, like at the end of the year, you'll see a lot of guardrail contractors replacing guardrail, and you think, why are you doing that? It looks like it's perfect. And so maybe we could try to grab a hold of some of that.
The biggest challenge that we are going to have on Church Street is the width of the road and the angle at which the post will have to go down in. And
The length of them, I mean, to get the height.
And our equipment, capability. So
Yeah.
Jason's working all that together just to see what that looks like, and we can provide you with facts to vote on. But I did want to let you know that it was denied by the EPA adding any up there.
Okay.
That's all I have pending your questions.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for your report. Now we're moving on to the good of the order. Mr. Booth, we'll start with you tonight.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Duffy. I appreciate the faith you've shown in me. Want to thank all the department heads for all their hard work. The city's really turning around and seeing a lot of good momentum. Just wanted to give a shout out all the fall athletes here at Nelsonville, York. Football's on a roll. Young Mr. Taylor had a great play there a couple weeks ago, so that is going well. Varsity volleyball just got to word. They're 13-2 now. Going into a big match at Alexandria Thursday. So these kids have shown a lot of resolve, and I think we could all take a page out of their book. So.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Really, I just want to remind everybody that early voting starts on October 6th, and that you can request an absentee ballot until October 31st, and get out and vote.
Thank you.
If you request an absentee ballot, you can also go online and check the status of it once you
Yes.
send it back.
All right, Mr. Smith?
When they was doing the water line down on Jackson Street, which is like 13, 14 feet deep, I stopped down there just like almost midnight, and that I'm sure those guys come to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was almost midnight, and they was just finishing up. They still had work. I thank them for their effort, but I'm on that second. any time of night or day, you can find those guys standing in the hole with, you know, in the wintertime, with water all over them, and they're doing a bang-up job, and I just wanted to thank them again. Recently, there was an incident from a man that used to sit on Nelsonville Council in Logan, Chris Smith. He was a two-term councilman, and he's one of the finest police officers that ever put the badge on. He's humble, and he's the school, as a school resource officer, the kids just love him. And there's been a lot on social media saying that Chris did something wrong. And I'm of the opinion that Chris didn't do anything wrong, that he was doing his duty as a police officer. And to that extent, if you're lucky enough to get a ticket to go to a football game, because I would love to go to a lot of football games. I actually officiated football for 25 years, and it just bothers me that I can't just go to any game I see, 7th, 8th grade, whatever. If you're lucky enough to get a voucher to go to a football game, it is not very much to ask that you put a mask on or a face shield or whatever. And I just wanted to support Chris. He's a great person, and he's a great police officer. And I thought it was important we said that. He did serve on Nelsonville Council for 2 terms.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Taylor.
So I think the only thing I have is, this is Athens week for the Buckeyes and football. So it's a big week for them, and hopefully, I know there's not a lot of people that can go, but hopefully people will be able to watch it and support them this week. And hopefully, they come out victorious. So I'll be wishing them well and excited for that game. And great job to the girls on volleyball. So they're still playing though. They have their season.
They just finished up, yeah, so they're at a 3-way tie for first place with Alexander and Benton County, and they play at Alexander Thursday, so.
Awesome. That's great. So good
There's
job
a
to
committee
those
meeting
ladies.
Thursday. I'll be at Alexander.
Mr. Sherman.
Well,
Oh boy, here we go.
I'd just like to thank the utility workers for all their hard work and working late, and the fire department as well, police department. I think the city's on a good term, finally coming into its own, and very pleased with the way things are going. That's all I got to say. I know. Don't poke the bear.
Wow. And for Carla, do your census.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Carla, do your census.
somebody mentioned the census, it ends in 2 days.
Yeah.
Did they still stay on that?
Yeah,
federal court,
we're not sure how it's gonna end.
Yeah, it
So-
was like the end of October.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I have to say is appreciate all the city workers. Every one of them makes a great team. I go around the city and I see a lot of changes. I see a lot of different attitudes in the city, and it all starts with our workers. So the citizens are coming up to me and saying great things, and that's a very nice thing. So thank you for all your hard work.
I'd also like to thank Susan Harmony for stepping in when
Of
we
course.
needed those to do the clerk's job.
If only you could let her do her job.
Yeah. Micromanage.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, so now we have a motion to go into executive session to discuss. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss ORC 121-22G for personal and legal matters. Well,
It's pending or threatened
pending
litigation
and threatening
and
litigation
labor negotiations.
and labor negotiations.
So moved.
Who are you inviting in?
I'm going to invite in Taylor and the city manager and Mr. Hunter.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah.
Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
And the clerk is excused.
I'm hungry.
And the clerk is excused.
And the clerk is excused.
All right.
But we're asking Mr. Betts to stay.
No, Mr. Betsy can go.
right.
I'm still paying the price for that.
Motion to come out of executive order session.
Session?
Second.
Appointed temporary clerk.
Motion to appoint temporary clerk.
Or no, motion to appoint Corey Taylor as temporary clerk.
Second.
Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Dumpy,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Yes.
Greg, okay. Mr. Taylor, yes. Mr. Sherman?
Yes. Real quick, I just want to make an acknowledgement that Dan Pfeiffer is our public information officer, and he does all that work for free, and he was a part-time firefighter as well, and just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do as well.
Absolutely.
Did we vote on coming out of the executive session?
Well,
So,
we
yeah.
motioned it, but we didn't vote on it.
Yeah, you guys did.
Motion to come out. Yeah.
Motion to
Come
come
on,
out of
clerk.
executive session.
Oh, yeah, there was a motion by Mr. Dumpy and,
Yeah,
Ms.
we
Jones
didn't vote on
seconded.
it.
We need a roll call then, so. Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, okay. Mr. Taylor, yes. Mr. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy,
Yes.
Do I gotta give the whole Dan
I'll make sure
Pfeiffer
that-
speech?
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You gotta do it.
didn't exist, okay. And then, I would like to make a motion, that we send back, the check that we had received on, Friday back to the county commissioner since we had not canceled that contract. And find out, receive clarity on their intentions by sending that check to us. And then, also to, ask Mr. Frank if he will see, if he can set up a meeting with the county commissioners to
Discuss this
discuss that
situation.
situation.
All right, well, hold on one second. Bear just texted me. Something happened. We lost audio.
Let's finish this.
Well, it's gotta be an open meeting to make a decision.
Bear, can you hear us? I'm looking for.
It is.
It's, no,
All right. I guess it's you, Bear. Sorry, we're live. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, yeah, it's on there.
Okay, was that motion good, or do I need to redo it?
I'll second that motion.
I already did, but that's
Oh,
all right.
okay,
You can do
hey,
it.
that's great.
I'll third the motion.
All right, Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Okay. Mr. Taylor, yes. Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Booth,
Mr.
Booth.
Booth.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
I guess I,
Just to be clear, we want the commissioners to come to
Nelson.
Nelsonville Council.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm not gonna do roll call, where did I start last time?
Second.
Oh, okay, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, yes. Mr. Sherman?
Yes?
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
What kind of devices did you order us, Scott?
End it.
Shut it off.
Flip phones.
Jeez.